Yo, sorry if I bursted your ears. Oh my goodness, I just hit recording, I swear. But, oh, what an intro. Welcome back, guys. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the worst retcons in comics. Now, what a segue, huh? Let's do a factory reset and get ourselves back on track. I'm wiggling my brain a little bit. Bro, I literally sneezed my eyeballs out. Two fingers, I'm gonna put it at the side of my head, do some chiropractic real quick, you feel me? Yeah. So now that we are at a state of equilibrium, let me get back to the sentence that I was going to say before I got sidetracked by myself sneezing. So, to kind of go back into the past and do a little bit of a recap, the Captain Americas, the Superman, the Batmen, I guess, they were at their most prevalent, I guess, in the American cultural zeitgeist during the World War II era, right? They were used to sell war bonds and the such, right? They were never seen in regular day life as much as they were at that point in time, and people would argue that that was at their most relevant, but I will counter that. Because of media and adaptations, they are now a global sensation. People around the world know of them and love them because of these forms of media. And why is that? What is the secret sauce? What aren't they telling us? It's retcons, and retcons in and of itself, what they are a modernization tool. A tool to bring characters into the modern era before they become relics of the past. And to kind of give you my interpretation of retcons and how I perceive it, I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts. So retcons are kind of like adding something, subtracting, or completely maybe reworking something that previously happened in a story to kind of suit your needs going forward, so that you have a new toy in the toy box to play with, or that you can completely remove something and not see it ever again, so that you have a more clear path going forward. Now, to kind of use a bit of an analogy, I'm going to use you. Yeah, you. I'm pointing at you through the screen.
Can you feel my gaze?
Say that you guys are walking out of your house, right? You walk out of your house and you make a left, because I'm telling you to go left in this story, and you see a giant mosquito. I'm not talking about a mosquito the size of your palm. You see this mosquito. It doesn't seem to be like particularly harmful, but it's kind of scary, right? It's pretty big, the size of a house, maybe two, stacked on top of each other. So you run back to your house to check the media, your phone, the TV, whatever that is, and you learn through them that the government accidentally created this monstrosity and to stay inside of your house. Then years later, we're gonna do a bit of a time skip, right? Young Justice Season 2 style. And in this part of the story, we learn that through the media, once again, that the government was actually lying to us to kind of prevent pandemonium, to prevent a sort of frenzy of the people from knowing this classified information. And this information that they were hiding from us was that aliens do exist, and they were shooting their alien juices, into these creatures, and that kind of created these monstrosities. And through more sightings, we learned that there is like giant mosquitoes, giant flies, giant tarantulas. Welcome back, Australia. But dude, that would be my worst nightmare. But yeah, that is the case. It's kind of like we learned this one thing, and then through retroactive continuity, we learned that actually it's not just this, it was actually this as well. And there are good retcons, and in this video, we're going to be talking about the bad retcons, the retcons that have led to comic fans, people who have bought monthly comics, to completely turn away from the medium. That's the level of complete garbage that we're talking about today. But before we get started, I want to talk about some honorable mentions, and maybe even down below, you guys leave some of your favorite or even hated, most hated retcons of all time, maybe even like a controversial retcon that you like that other people might not. Leave it down below. I'd like to hear it. Don't feel afraid, guys. Like, let us know your thoughts. It's a safe space, trust me. But yeah, let's get through some honorable mentions. So, runner-ups, Green Lantern. Now, Green Lantern is a very interesting pick because I love Green Lantern, and the retcon I want to talk about is the Parallax retcon. Now, I'm kind of iffy. The honorable mentions of in this like little section that I'm going to talk about are really iffy, because on one hand, they're going to be parts that I like, parts that I dislike. Maybe they're even things that I think are really bad, but people don't mention it enough in like later works for me to think of it as one of the worst, or there's an easy fix. That is my sort of mindset for the honorable mentions. But going back, Parallax retcon. Now, making it a giant alien fear bug, who's like the entity or embodiment of fear, is really cool. And it was the jumping off point to get us, the reader, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern Corps, into this whole new mythos of the emotional spectrum, expanding the lore, expanding the power system, giving us a really cool one that wasn't just about willpower. I'm pretty sure the Cordian ring, the yellow ring, was actually built on willpower as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like that was the only source of power, and he really did mix things up and made it more interesting and gave us a lot of material for years to come. The greatest era of Green Lantern, in my opinion. But going to the possession aspect and how it possessed Hal Jordan, that is where it becomes a little bit iffy for me. Because going to the 90s, from him being Parallax to the Spectre, there was one really great arc of redemption and kind of taking that negativity, that evilness out of his heart and saying that it wasn't something that he did, completely destroys that arc. He went on such a journey. Even in Jeff Johns' run, he had to prove himself to his fellow Green Lanterns to kind of tell everybody that he is a changed man. But taking all of that responsibility out of his hands, it really rubs me the wrong way, because yes, he can be possessed, and if it is this way, because there is certain ways of looking at it, because if it's the way that I want it to be, where it's like he was possessed, but he is stronger than the fear entity, his willpower is strong enough to supersede it. If you look at like the recent solicitations of Green Lantern, you could see him actually taming Parallax with his Green Lantern ring, literally making it his dragon in the recent run. And there was certain lines of dialogue in Rebirth like this where it's like he is stronger than it and he has to be stronger than it. But if it was like a Call of Duty lobby, like little kids speaking stuff into his head, saying all of these negative things and kind of pushing him towards it, but he let his negative impulses have the better of him, right, to do all of these heinous things, it would be completely fine because it was still his choice, it was still his hand, he had full control, and he decided to let go. If it was like that, I'm perfectly fine with it. If it's like completely out of his hands and the Parallax entity made him do all of these things, it just makes his character arc not only obsolete, it makes it unable to happen, because Hal Jordan as Parallax, while he was a monster, you could tell there was a method to his insanity. Everything that he was doing was for the purpose of creating a better world. And if it was just Parallax, it wouldn't make sense, because all that bug cares about is inspiring the most amount of fear. So that is my opinion. What do you guys think? Now let's move on to Batman. Now Batman, I'm gonna be talking about Kevin Smith's, I'm pretty sure it was the Widening Gyre or like Cacophony. I don't know which one it was. Kevin Smith only had 2 Batman runs, and both he completely lost the plot, let me tell you. So you know the famous Batman Year 1 speech, where he goes into like Carmine Falcone's place, all the mob bosses, all the corrupt officials, all of them. He breaks in, has a spotlight ready, he blows it up, he turns off the lights, he makes his grand entrance, and he says something along the lines of like, let me just speak it out, ladies, gentlemen, I see you've eaten Gotham's spirit, Gotham's wealth, but your feast is nearly over. From this moment on, none of you are safe. That got me snapping. I know you won't be able to hear it from the noise gate, but like, dude, that was a peak Batman moment. And Kevin Smith came on, and jumping his way in, just like, you know what, guys? I have this really good idea, guys. You guys want to huddle up and hear my idea? Yeah, sure, Kevin Smith. What do you want to talk about? So I have this idea, DC, where it's like, in that moment, he was really cool, but actually what happened was like, he had like this little bladder spurt, and he actually himself, and that's all I want to say. Yeah, that was really great. Round of applause, man. That was... Congratulations. I really love that. Go for it. We're down to print it whenever you want. Like, who thought this was the right thing to do? Granted, the reason why it's in honorable mentions is because nobody mentions this ever again other than Kevin Smith in probably his second run. I don't know, but nobody mentions it, and that is for the best. Next, let's move on to Marvel. Let's talk about Jean Grey. Now, Jean Grey, if you guys seen like X-Men 97 or wherever you get your daily dose of X-Men, she was obviously a big part and literally the main villain of the Dark Phoenix saga, right? She was somebody with unimaginable power, immeasurable power, but she lost herself to the heart of darkness, right? And this led to her committing next level, all-time Hall of Fame levels of genocide. Like, it's never been seen before what somebody can do with the flick of their wrist, the level of damage that she caused. But at the end of the story, she caught herself and she ends her own life. She realizes everything, and in a poignant moment, she undoes everything and the day is saved. She killed billions, but I guess to get Jean back to a level or state without the baggage, they made it so this wasn't Jean in the first place. Her body was found, I'm pretty sure, in a cocoon and in like Jamaica Bay and somewhere like that. But the Phoenix Force wasn't actually bonded to Jean Grey. It didn't even possess her. It just made a copy of her and replaced her while Jean was healing. So it's like, and it's really funny considering characters like Cyclops or like Harley Quinn or even like Scarlet Witch, they're able to do disastrous things but still be redeemed. But for Jean Grey, for some reason, they wanted to completely absolve her by making it a clone copy. And it really just makes the original story just so much more complicated. And there's so many different ways to make her have a redemption arc when they resurrect her, but they decided to do this, and that is just the main canon. The fact that Jean Grey has had the Phoenix and done crazy stuff even after this story happened, and died like 26, 27 times. And we are okay with it, so I don't know what the purpose of this retcon even was, but it's still here, still part of canon. Does Marvel need a reboot? I don't know, let me know. Now let's move on to Hydra Cap, the biggest and weirdest example of things that just went haywire. So in Nick Spencer's run, as many of you guys know, it led to the famous and controversial saying of him basically verbatim stating "Hail Hydra," and it got retconned. It was actually the main Captain America, and they planted the seeds that he was an undercover Hydra agent this entire time and just needed to be activated. And that would piss off a lot of people, but eventually they came to the conclusion that Red Skull used the Cosmic Cube to reality warp and change the entire perception of not only Steve's memories but his history into believing that he always supported Hydra and Nazism. In the Secret Empire event, he completely takes over America. He creates this entire like space bubble to prevent any sort of outside interference from like the extraterrestrial like cosmic characters. And he has his way with the planet. I'm pretty sure it was Sam Wilson, the Falcon, or Captain America at this time, I'm pretty sure. He uses the Cosmic Cube to create his ideal version of Steve Rogers. He creates another version and he defeats Hydra Cap. They do this literal mirror match and he ends up winning. And Hydra Cap went to prison and we're kind of stuck with this Cosmic Cube kerfluffle of a Steve Rogers. And he is still this version. The main Cap that we see in comics is this Cosmic Cube variant. The one that was in like Rick Reminder's run, the one that was in Ed Brubaker's run, that version is completely bastardized. And we just don't talk about it. If you look at the JMS run, I haven't read Captain America since Rick Reminder, I'm not gonna lie, but people have told me that in the JMS run, they have completely ran with it, and the Steve Rogers that we see basically might as well be the normal 616 Steve Rogers, right? He is essentially the same character with the same memories, so it's like, what do we really do? But the thing is, what really prevents me from putting it on the list is the fact that there is so many different ways to kind of change or retcon this into its proper position. They could just say that the Cosmic Cap was the real version and the Hydra Cap was just a machination of the Cosmic Cube. They could literally just turn it into that. That's all it needs to be, and they can fix everything. That's why it's not on the list, but if you guys wanted to put him on the list, completely justifiable. Now, let's get onto the worst retcons in comic book history. I want to talk about my girl Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, top 5 and at the very least top 10 superheroes of all time. I don't know why people want to downgrade Diana's character as if she doesn't have motion. If you think about like the real world accolades, she is instrumental in the construction of the lie detector. She was literally a real life UN ambassador for the empowerment of young girls. What are we doing here? Trying to downplay her character and her relevance or importance. If you look at post-crisis, the best universe when it comes to DC, in my opinion, in terms of like quality and creativity, if you look at it, all of her runs, from the very instrumental George Perez rework of the character, that entire run, to like William Messner Loebs, who introduced like Artemis and the other tribes of the Amazons, to John Byrne, who I really don't like his writing style. Only in like She-Hulk or I guess X-Men I'll like tolerate it, but like he actually did a solid job with Wonder Woman, adding like Cassie Sandsmark. Then to like Phil Jimenez's run, where it's like some of the best single issues of Wonder Woman that you will ever read, from like Paradise Lost, Paradise Found. A Day in the Life, where you see Wonder Woman get interviewed by Lois Lane, where we see her do her usual superhero things, but also be an ambassador for Themyscira, for like helping underprivileged children who are starving. All of this stuff, to even like the crossover with Batman, where we really got to see the ideology of not only her character, but also Batman in terms of how he sees the gods and the entire Bat family and the Wonder family at the time, to Greg Rucka being one of, if not the best superhero comics of his era. So it's like, even that, we're downplaying her character despite being so consistent. And then even Wonder Woman Historia, just read those 3 single issues. Those are better than 90-95% of your favorite heroes' runs, if not their best run. So it's like, come on now. But either way, the retcon that I want to talk about is the reproduction retcon in the New 52. Now, what really me off is that, I gotta stop myself, is that a lot of people like to think, because of YouTube Shorts and what gets pushed a lot on YouTube Shorts and on TikTok, is the New 52 method of reproduction, which is not even canon. It was only canon for the period, like, I don't know, 3-4 years maybe. But it's like, people consider that to be the truth, and because of that, they use that as a way to downplay her character. And what this is that Amazons, how they reproduced, was through sailors that got too close to Themyscira. They would raid the ship, seduce the men, have their way with them, right? Consensually, I guess, because how would you say no to an Amazon? Let me stop. But then they would kill them, innocent men, mind you, and if they were a girl, they would be raised as an Amazon. If they're a boy, they would be given to Hephaestus, the god of the forge, obviously, who would raise them to be, I guess, weaponsmiths, I'm pretty sure, and that was obviously in exchange for weapons being given to the Amazons when they were ready. And on top of that, Wonder Woman was made the daughter of Zeus, which, if you know anything about Wonder Woman's original character, that goes so against the mythos of literally everything, having a man be so instrumental to her character. If you know anything about the OG, or I guess even the post-crisis, the most familiar version, is that Wonder Woman's true origin, and what's continuously seen as canon, is that she was molded through clay by Hippolyta, and then given life and powers through the gods. And that kind of gives us a good reason for why she is so strangely strong when compared to other Amazons, who are strong in and of themselves, but Wonder Woman is on a different tier, Superman level, not to the same degree, but obviously in that same tier. And on top of that, it's also our gateway to a lore drop that I'm about to give you so that you guys can be more knowledgeable. So, the way that Amazons usually reproduce is through asexual means. Now, it comes from something called the Cavern of Souls, which is located at the River Styx, right? The underworld, in the underworld where it's like, with like Medusa and stuff like that. And for centuries, women would be killed by men through hateful acts, and these souls that kind of loop around in a circle are women killed by men, which makes you really think about things like, is Martha Wayne one of those souls, and maybe is she even reincarnated into an Amazon and nobody knows? That would be really fascinating if ever discussed, but probably it's something best left to the imagination. But they were just this spiral of souls for like forever, and then Lady Artemis, what she did behind Zeus's back was make a whole civilization of Amazons through putting these souls into bodies that she created, and that is how Amazons reproduce, right? It's like, if you think about it, there is a never-ending supply of souls, so you don't really have to do all of this edgy things, but for some reason the New 52 wanted to desecrate Diana's character and the people of the Amazons, and I hate that it is what a lot of people know through shorts, because a lot of tourists and I guess normies will look at that and like, dude, that is the version, and then they'll start spitting this sort of rhetoric against Wonder Woman's character without even reading a single Wonder Woman comic, but it is what it is. Now, before I turn into a hard-boiled mess of just lava and anger, before a Red Lantern ring takes me, let's switch to another character. The Flash, particularly Barry Allen. I want to talk about Flash Rebirth by Jeff Johns, 2009, I'm pretty sure. And I'm not going to say anything very petty about like I hate Barry Allen and his existence and him coming back in Flash Rebirth, which it really was Final Crisis, but him coming back was such a problem. I'm not going to say that because I do like Barry Allen and I think there is a space for him, but what I do hate was all of the retcons. So the first retcon that I don't like is Thawne killing Barry's mother. Now, for Thawne, it makes him more of a hater and makes me like his character more, but the overall mythos of the Flash and the thesis of it and Barry Allen as a whole, it just goes against. As a character, he was somebody who was inspired by his lifehood hero, which was the Golden Age Flash Jay Garrick through comic books. But giving him this sort of grim, dark, I don't know, rework just because they felt like he needed some sort of tragic backstory to make him interesting was just not the right move, and honestly lessens Barry as a character. But yeah, this is not anything that's going to be changed anytime soon. It's so iconic that the Flash TV show made it canon, and even like Zack Snyder's Justice League and stuff like that. So it's like a lot of people grew up with it, so that's why they're very hard to persuade that this is actually a bad thing. But either way, it's not going to get changed, so there's no problem here, right? I can't change it, you can't change it, it is what it is. The second one is what boils and grinds my gear the most. It is how they try to position Barry Allen as the most important character there is in Flash mythos by saying that he generates the Speed Force every step he takes, which is stupid, all caps, like literally, because if you think about it, the Speed Force itself was introduced in Wally West's run, so that takes importance off of him, and then on top of that, it's making it seem like Barry is what made Jay be able to use the Speed Force and everyone else in the Flash family use it, so he is the linchpin. If you take him out, there is some sort of causal effect, which didn't really happen because this wasn't even in canon until Flash Rebirth. How does a single person create such an extra-dimensional force that is a literal embodiment of time? Him getting struck by lightning made him create this force that makes you on par with characters like Superman. How does that make sense? And it wasn't even canon for that long, but that's what people think when they talk about the Speed Force, that he generates it with every step, which doesn't make sense. What made the Speed Force so interesting was the mystery aspect. We didn't know what this force was, where it came from, how it actually works. Max Mercury, the Zen master of the Speed Force, he dedicated his life to understand the Force. Wally West, in turn, through all of his efforts, unintentionally I guess, dedicated his life to master it. And then we have Barry Allen here basically do nothing, and apparently he created it. Why? And even despite as much flack as like Cy Spurrier gets for his Flash run, I will stand on business and say Strange Attractor and Until Time Stands Still, those two parts of that one arc that was like 13-14 issues, is one of, if not the best Flash arc of like recent memory. It's a full in-depth character study of not only Wally West, Linda, and her effects with like postpartum depression, for like a complete character study of Ira West, to expanding on Jai West's character to make me love him even more than I thought I would, making him honestly one of the most unique Speed Force characters ever. But what I liked was how he actually decided to be the one person to finally explain the mystery of the Speed Force. And honestly, I can't really give it much justice. I have discussed this before in previous videos, but I'm going to read an excerpt from DC Fandom, that wiki page, so that you guys kind of understand it, but that it completely remembers that love is literally the thesis of the Flash. Love, if you have it, it powers all, it can do anything. As corny as it sounds, that is the source. But furthermore, speaking of the source, I'm going to talk about it. So here we go. The arc angles, which don't worry about them, revealed the Speed Force and the other forces spring from an omniversal being residing behind or beyond the source wall known as the Deep Change. It is the very source of time itself, with the concept of time described as its dreams. As an all-powerful being, the Deep Change is unable to feel its creation from a grounded perspective. Thus, it allows speedsters to leech its raw temporal energy in exchange for being able to use them as a sensory organ, a symbiotic relationship between it and the conduits who feed it emotion and experience in exchange for their powers. Through history, the Deep Change has used the Speed Force to reach out and alter those with its wonderful gifts, usually in the form of interdimensional lightning storms. That right there is an example of a goated retcon, because do you understand how seamless that is? That is complex, but the fact that we were able to break it down just like that and it rolls off the tongue, that's how you know, and it feels natural. Cy Spurrier was in his bag, but that is honestly why the Flash Rebirth is literally the bane of my existence. Do any of you guys agree? Let me know down below. And finally, on the DC side, the last character that I want to talk about is the Red Hood and his resurrection. Now, I too was once a Red Hood glazer. I was a Red Hood superfan, and then I read his comics, and then I was like, maybe he isn't all that. I guess Nightwing, Tim Drake, and Damian are just better characters, because I understand why people could love Red Hood if they just watch the animated movie. Because yes, is it peak? Yeah. Is the character great? Yes. Even in the comic version of Under the Red Hood, the portrayal of Jason as a sort of anti-villain, somebody who was deeply unhinged, but his entire philosophy was like, you can't really destroy or defeat crime, you can only really control it. And the fact that his end goal was like really to get Joker and really have Batman understand where he was coming from, but still having this deeply unhinged thing about him, maybe the Lazarus Pit did that. It was really fascinating. But the story itself kind of fell from his true potential because, unfortunately, it was kind of stuck in between War Games, a horrible Batman event, and Infinite Crisis, the big universe-spanning series. So it's like, it had to like deal with all of these things, so it couldn't be as conclusive as a lot of people wanted it to be. And after that, he really did go on a rampage. He kind of had some really iffy moments in terms of writing, being like a Nightwing copycat, killing people. His fights with Nightwing were always really good, like in the Outsiders run, pretty good. His rivalry with him when Nightwing finally became Batman, and his like interactions with like Green Arrow when everything was written by Judd Winnick. All of that stuff was pretty darn enjoyable. Him being a villain or an anti-villain, whichever side you may think, even though he was more psychotic than not. It was very entertaining and I enjoyed it. But as soon as it turned to the New 52, you could tell they really didn't know what to do with the character. New 52 Outsiders was trash, one of the worst comics of all time. I'm going to stand by that. Rebirth Outsiders was pretty good when it was in its original like 20-ish issue run. As soon as it changed into the outlaw status quo, that's when it became a lot more monotonous to eventually in very bad territory. And ever since then, Red Hood has been in this he's stuck in a loop where there is no progression. He has not cut out a space for himself. Him being accepted into the Bat family is really stupid because you're like, this goes for the entire Bat family, not just Batman, but you have fought against people who did less than what he did, but he's still allowed into the family. And then if you make him too much on this side, then it creates conflict and then they fight again. So it's like, you need to put him in a different city or something like that. Create a new city, create a new like status quo where he's literally like the Punisher for that city, and make him just go off, remove all ties from the Joker. Him using the moniker of his killer, like the former moniker, is just plain hard. You can't get rid of that. But everything else, get rid of all connections, move him somewhere else. You can't be there. But it really makes it worse. And honestly, I think he really should have died, and he should have stayed dead at this point. But what makes it worse is I look at somebody like the Winter Soldier, and let me glaze Bucky for a bit, because people don't understand how great of a character he is, and how this is the same model, the Winter Soldier Red Hood model. It's the same. And honestly, Winter Soldier is just a better version of this character trope, because like obviously there is good Bucky comics before he became the Winter Soldier. Even now, Philip Kennedy Johnson is doing Hell Hunters, where it's like Bucky being an absolute demon child, along with characters like Wolverine and a version of Ghost Rider, right? In World War II, having this special team, that was fire. But then on top of that, there was like flashbacks in Ed Brubaker's run in the Captain America and Bucky storyline, which was like 9 issues in the main Captain America run. But yeah, having Ed Brubaker be your main creator is honestly a godsend, because after that, all these things, the original storyline, which is just called The Winter Soldier, you get basically most of the important cliff notes in the movie. But after that, he's always seen planted throughout Ed Brubaker's run, to the point where he actually becomes Captain America for a lengthy period of time. And he was great as Captain America. And then after that, when he actually had to leave that role, Brubaker came in and gave 14 issues of Winter Soldier in a solo run, which was great. On top of that, you could see they were really playing the strengths of what his character could be. He reached his potential, in my opinion. And then even there, from like Rick Remender, to kind of like keep this flow of the main Captain America writer writing for the Winter Soldier in his book, Remender did a mini-series called The Bitter March, which was like, you know what guys, we haven't really explored what makes Winter Soldier so deadly as an assassin, right? So it took us back to him being an assassin back in the day, and we're like, dude, this man is scary. So we see him as the main protagonist, as a literal villain role. Then we have Bucky Barnes the Winter Soldier, one of my favorite runs, which makes him a cosmic character, right? He takes Nick Fury's position as man on the wall, so he protects Earth from intergalactic threats. And he meets characters like Loki. He fights like intergalactic drug smugglers, like an alien queen. There's so much stuff in that, and it's also very psychedelic, trippy, visually stunning. One of the best looking books out there, and just very creative. I never thought they would do a Winter Soldier book like that, and just going back to a more grounded style. Kyle Higgins did a book where he had to fight somebody who experienced something just like him, but a kid. It's like a mirror, but even more sad. Like, it's just very heartbreaking, but also pushes Winter Soldier further into his path of becoming a hero. So they did literally all they could with the character, and they're still giving him great stuff, like putting him on the Invaders. Chip Zdarsky did a great run with him on the Invaders team, like Namor and Cap and all that stuff. So it's like, there is no shortage of great Bucky stories. The fact that I can name top 10 Winter Soldier books, but I can't for Red Hood, should tell you something. Red Hood is obsolete. Kill him, or somebody do a complete rework. He needs it. Thank you. But yeah, now let's move on to Marvel. Kind of springing off my last video, I want to talk about the Sentry now. As we know, Sentry is a Silver Age character brought into the modern day, and I'm not going to talk about all of the background stuff of him being a Silver Age character and like him being best friends of like Reed Richards and stuff like that. I hate that too, because every time that they go back in the past, there is no continuity being upheld because people forget that Sentry should be there at the beginning because of the mind wipe. But nobody brings it up, and I hate the inconsistencies that this one character leads because of that. But removing that entirely, what I want to talk about is Bendis and what he did with him in New Avengers and how he really didn't understand the character. And I know a lot of people in my previous video said that they really did like what Bendis did, but I want to just get my take out. So the Void in and of itself, if you look at the serum, where as a kid, his origin as a kid was that something along the lines of he was trapped in this sort of, it's a very Silver Age story of him getting hit and bombarded by cosmic rays or whatever, some sort of cosmic science accident, and he gets these powers, right? Very on the nose, right? You could see the tropes that it was kind of imitating and kind of making fun of, but obviously in a loving way. But it got retconned to him being a drug addict, where it's like, okay, why? Like, where did this come from? But on top of that, it's like, let me just read this panel here. It was like this. He was an addict, he was a junkie, and guess what? As only a junkie can, he fell backwards into accidentally discovering his ultimate drug, the ultimate high. He found what he called a serum. So you're telling me, him being a junkie, he was like, you know what, I'm gonna find a drug. He somehow found a way into this experimental lab, got this thing, and got the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. This doesn't make any sense. Is this a parody? Oh, he's a drug addict and he just found this? Why did he get it? Why did nobody else get it? Why does it say do not touch Project Sir? Look, they paint it as a serious thing. It's even in black and white, but this just seems like very inept in some like writing ability, because there's so many questions that can be asked by this poor decision of changing his origin. But what I really want to talk about is the Void. Now the Void kind of balanced and interacted with the serum that Sentry had, or the powers that Sentry got, where it's like, just like Steve's serum, it amplifies everything that is already there, right? And for Sentry, it amplified all the negative thoughts and all the mental health issues that he was having, and it kind of manifested itself in the Void. I don't want to say a split personality, but kind of, right? It created this alternate version where it's like he is just pure hate and he wants to destroy things, right? He is his own worst enemy. A lot of people have that as a sort of moniker. Somebody like a Daredevil or a Green Arrow tend to be very, or even Batman, they tend to be very self-destructive, but Sentry literally makes this as literal as can be. So what was really weird is that there's so many different aspects of the Sentry that gets ignored. So in one circumstance, we see that the Void was created by this sort of psychic virus, and Emma Frost quote-unquote fixes him, he is cured. But then in the next miniseries, it gets completely ignored, so we're already starting with the inconsistencies. And now, in what they use for the drug aspect, they kind of position it in a way as that's the reason why he was so easily manipulated by Norman Osborn, because he is a junkie. But it's like, this Sentry becomes such a weak character because of it. It's like, are you serious? This character that seems so important, strong, kind of, I guess, noble, but overall he just had this presence to him. And the fact that because he's a junkie and this is his origin story and this, that, and that, he's able to get manipulated by, like, that's like saying Superman could get manipulated by, I don't know, like Veronica Cale, Wonder Woman's equivalent to Lex Luthor. So it's like, what are we doing here? Like the amount of damage that he's done, and on top of that, instead of making it his negative emotions, he tried to paint the Void as literally a biblical, from my knowledge, from what I remember, a biblical angel of death that bonded to him when he got the serum. So it bonded to him the exact time that he decided to drink the serum because he's a drug addict. Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? Like, how much of a mess this creates and how a lot of people at this time took him to be less of a character than what he really should be? Sentry has a lot of potential, but Marvel and Bendis really fumbled the bag to the point that Sentry was in such a horrible state that he's been dead for like 5-6 years and nobody really cares. He was a big player in the Thunderbolts movie and nobody's talking about resurrecting him. That's how bad it was. And Marvel, you need a great writer to get on the character ASAP. Oh, it is what it is. Next character. Honestly, it's more of a big kind of conglomeration, but I want to talk about, well, I'm going to call it the Mutant Anomaly. Now, what I mean by this is how editorial at Marvel tried to change people from being mutants, or to be mutants, for no reason other than probably maybe brand synergy, and trying to bend and mold things with the MCU so that everything kind of works together. But if you look at, let me give you some examples. So the first one was in, I'm pretty sure, Uncanny Avengers Axis, the Axis Power event. So Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were revealed to not be Magneto's children and therefore were not mutants at all. This just makes things unnecessarily convoluted and I guess less resonant, everything that happened beforehand, if we could just hand wave it away and just say that they weren't related at all. So all of these poignant moments and just insane, crazy ones that are completely immoral, all of it is for us at that point. Then like with Kamala Khan when she was killed in the horrible Death of Miss Marvel event, just to be reborn like a month or a couple days later in a new run like Kamala Khan New Mutants. Kamala Khan has been reborn anew, Miss Marvel New Mutant. That is a tagline. She became a new mutant from being previously Inhuman. And it's not only does it take away from the Inhumans, which honestly they need a win, they really need a win now, but is this to match with Miss Marvel from the MCU? I haven't seen the MCU, but was she a mutant in that? Let me know down below. And I guess furthermore, Franklin Richards was retconned to not be a mutant. And I don't remember if it was because he reality warped to like not be a mutant anymore or stuff like that, but it's like, I don't understand the thought process. What makes them better or worse for being a mutant? Kamala Khan here, she's just gonna be one of the many pixels on the background of an X-Men comic. They're just gonna forget her unless she's given another solo run. If we look at Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, that was backtracked as soon as they could. If you look at Franklin Richards, him being a mutant allowed him to be like drafted into the Krakoa, I guess the problems that happened in Krakoa as an ally to the mutants, and it led to a lot of internal struggle between like the Richards and like the Fantastic Four family, and the fact that they had their son or their nephew or whatever be drafted in a war or in a battle with them having to stay back on the sidelines. There's a lot of things that they did and could be doing right now if they kept everything the same. Miss Marvel being an Inhuman, that was created and a thing by the original creator. Why are you trying to disrespect what the creator made in the first place? All of this is just a stain on a lot of them, making things needlessly confusing, especially when you consider that a lot of these will be reverted back in 2 to 3 years. You're just making Marvel history more of a jumbled mess. And now we move on to the greatest sinner of retcons of all time, our boy Peter Parker, Spider-Man in the flesh. Honestly, I could make a whole video on Spider-Man himself, but I'm not a masochist, so let's just go through the list. So the first one is Sin's Past, and dude, if I need to explain this to you, it's horrible. Okay, it basically character assassinated both Gwen Stacy and Norman Osborn, and made it so that Norman actually slept with Gwen when she was a teenager and had twins. They had twins. It literally smeared Gwen's legacy. And the fact that it was only retconned in like 2022, 2021 is absolutely vile. Marvel, what were you waiting for? The Clone Saga was very fascinating because it had this sort of claim that Ben Reilly, the person that we thought was a clone, was the original Spider-Man and Peter was the clone the whole time, and everybody was mad who heard about this because not only was it a long story arc and very confusing as it is, the fact that it made it seem like the past like 30-40 years, when was it again? 60s? So like the last like 30 years of Peter's comics were just us following a clone is just so damaging. It's like, dude, we weren't even following the genuine article. The character that I love is not even the real deal. Why Marvel? And it did so much damage that they eventually had to roll back on what they did. So it's like, yeah, it was a big, bold move, and I advocate for these certain swings, but that one you guys should have known was a... that was a miss. Furthermore, let's go on to Harry's death. Now, Harry's death has been retconned multiple times, but the worst offender, was when he became Kindred, right? They revealed that his soul was like in hell, and he became a demon like a villain with supernatural abilities. So you're already making a character with a complex legacy. More complicated. It's literally the name of the game when it comes to Spider-Man retcons. Now there's like even, what else? The Spider Totem, and I honestly hate a lot of the retcons I'm talking about is from the JMS era, J. Michael Straczynski era, because that is my favorite, or at least top 3 favorite Spider-Man runs of all time. And for the most part, despite its problems, I think it is a masterclass in modern day superhero storytelling. But I feel like a lot of things were either out of his control and he had to play with it, or he did things that other writers would just bastardize. So the Spider Totem stuff was very interesting because I added a level of cosmic significance to Spider-Man, but also made it seem less of a complete accident, something that could have happened to anybody, to like literally making Spider-Man something of legend, right? He literally was written in the web of destiny to become Spider-Man. And yes, while obviously we know Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man is destiny because of all the multiple alternate like universe versions, that was in universe the starting point. Peter Parker 616 is the singular dot on the graph, and him being that, becoming Spider-Man was a complete accident, and that led to ripple effects to other universes. That's how it should have been looked at, but unfortunately not. Eventually this did lead to like the Spider-Verse and like more Lun and characters like that. But as the years go by, as we get yearly Spider-Verse events rehashing the same thing over and over again, as we see characters like Morlun, who was once really cool and menacing, get brought down into villain of the week territory, it really shows you how a great idea can run itself into the ground. Yes, I do prefer a more science-based origin, but JMS, he hit his idea in the park with flying colors. And the fact that the rest of Spider-Man editorial just smashed every single bit of the Spider-Verse and Spider Totem mythology for its worth really is one of the biggest tragedies in Spider-Man comics. And finally, obviously, I have to talk about One More Day. I feel like all of you know what this is. Peter Parker making a deal with Mephisto to trade his marriage to save Aunt May's life. A woman who should have already been dead, who's probably like 200 years old, maybe 500. She probably lived in the biblical era, maybe even seen the plague. But it's like, why would you do this, Peter? It erased one of the longest standing marriages in comics. Just for quote unquote relatability, because people can't really relate to married Peter for some reason, even though as you grow up and grow older, you're supposed to grow with the character. And seeing ourselves like kind of like a Wally West situation. What I love about Wally West is that he literally is Peter Parker, but just allowed to move on. Peter can't. He has to stay in this singular spot of not knowing what's going to happen the next day, not being able to provide for himself. He doesn't even know if he'll be able to make enough rent for the month. Where it's like, dude, you're one of the smartest characters alive. You're not inhibited by your teenager/young adult brain. You are a 30-year-old man. What is up with you? You gotta wake up, Peter. But that just isn't happening. Hopefully Joe Kelly makes a switch, does something bold, but I'm not holding my breath. But yeah, guys, what do you think? Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, turn on post notifications so you know when a new video goes live, and remember to leave down below your favorite or least favorite retcons, or even things that you found to be controversial but you thought were done for the betterment of that character going forward. But yeah, see you all next time. Take care.